The Flashing Girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Oh, Mr. Sheffield. That's right, it's a podcast about The Nanny, a hit TV show from the 90s starring Fran Drescher. And I, along with my friend, am going to talk about it. Who am I? I am Sean DiPasquale here with
Toria Sheffield.
That's right. And this week we are discussing Season 5, Episode 6, A Decent Proposal, directed by Dorothy Lyman and written by Ivan Menchel.
Oh.
He's a real Menchel. Toria, what
you think
episode
he's Jewish?
No, German. Toria, what's this episode about?
Well, this is the episode in which the family goes to Atlantic City and Chevy Chase sort of hits on Fran. We'll get into it, but it's an episode basically that establishes that Mr. Sheffield is still a very jealous lover.
Yes. We also get a special guest appearance by Chevy Chase and the episode filmed in Trump Taj Mahal in Atlantic City, which...
Yes.
I want to discuss with that too, but
and also A Decent Proposal is a play on the film title An Indecent Proposal, which again, some of our younger listeners might not even realize. It's a very famous movie from the 90s. The premise being that a very, very wealthy man tells this married woman that she will pay her and the husband $1 million if he gets like one night with her. It's like what that does to the marriage. It's Demi Moore and Woody Harrelson are the couple, and then Robert Redford is the older millionaire.
Which right from go, you're like, I don't know if Demi Moore would marry Woody Harrelson. What world is this taking place in?
I mean, I don't know. I think we see it all the time.
I also, we will post this at the week of this, but I just sent you a screenshot of my notes for this episode.
Okay.
That I think will make a very funny.
I want to see. Hold on, I'm gonna
make a very funny. So if you're listening to this, we'll make sure that this is up so you can go to our.
I just saw.
Go to our Instagram, Oh Mr. Chef Pod, and you'll be able to see a screenshot of part of my notes for this episode.
Okay. This episode, it starts on Mr. Sheffield and Cece in the office, and Cece is trying to convince Mr. Sheffield that they should produce a one-man show. She's like, it's cheap, it's inexpensive, you can get a lot of people in, and he's really hesitant until she says that she thinks they can get Chevy Chase to star in it. Again, maybe our younger listeners might not even know who Chevy Chase is, because even Community at this point is a while ago, but Chevy Chase, he first became famous starring in the very first season of Saturday Night Live in 1975. And he very famously kind of just like skyrocketed to fame very, very quickly, like within weeks of the show premiering, to the point where he left the show after the first season to go pursue what he thought was going to be some like huge, crazy movie career that like ended up not being what he thought it would be. And he's also famous for basically being like a huge jerk at this point in the world, because there's many reasons post all of this where, he's like known to be racist, known to be incredibly sexist. But I think what in my readings of the Chevy Chase saga, it seems like he's someone who suffered from like huge ego syndrome. Like he got famous very, very quickly and really then was never able to cope with not having the career he thought and became very bitter. That's like my take on a Chevy Chase, but that's just all context, baby.
I mean, yeah, I think a lot of that is true, but what we've learned over the last few years, mostly starting with because the people on Community were so outspoken about his behavior on set, is that Chevy Chase has always been somewhat of a problematic and difficult person to work with. Like this, there's more stories have come out, not just from Community, but from other people that have worked on other shows and movies with him. It seems like he's just maybe like kind of not the most fun guy to work with.
Yeah.
Like he seems very like full of himself, very like stubborn on set. He doesn't seem to take direction very well. He thinks he's always got the funniest ideas, and so I know, like on Community, him and Dan Harmon clashed a lot because he was like, I can do this better. Like, I know the funnier version of this, which as a showrunner of a successful comedy is very insulting to hear. So he he was beloved. Like, the thing is like at this time, he would have been the guy who was loved for being the dad in the vacation movies, the National Lampoon vacation movies. And so like for a long period of time, he was like beloved by like the public, and I really think it was like the Community stuff that started to turn the tide a little bit and had, gave people like lifted that veil.
Yeah. It's very much like the world changed and he's refused to change with it kind of vibe with him.
As Weezer once said, the world has turned and left him here.
But anyway, so yes, at this point, Cece's like, oh, but Maxwell, I'm pretty sure we can get Chevy Chase. And he's like, okay, in that case, I'll consider it. And she's like, great. He's headlining a show in Atlantic City this weekend. So I'm going to book us tickets and we're going to go have a meeting with him. And at first, it's just going to be Cece and Mr. Sheffield going because Fran overhears this. And she's like, I love Atlantic City. Ma gave me a coupon for a prime rib dinner for 17 cents. And Mr. Sheffield, who still has kept Fran in the doghouse because of the Elton John incident, makes it very clear that this is a purely business trip and like basically she's not invited. So then Fran, in an expert move, she goes, oh, it's okay. I mean, I have a date Saturday night anyway. And he instantly kind of like perks up and he's like, a date? Well, no, I mean, actually, so the kids are going to come. So actually you need to come. So you're going to need to cancel that date. And I don't think I've ever been quite as annoyed on Fran's behalf at this point. I'm like, dude, you won't even ask her out on a second date, which is something we've also established in this scene because he's still just sulking. But yet he is incredibly jealous and like preventing her from moving on.
Well, but I mean, yes, but the twist at the end of this scene is that she knows all of this and is purely manipulating him. So like, yes, I hear you. And I had the same initial reaction where I was like, man, this guy's such a clown. And then right before we got that reveal, I went, oh, wait, no, I bet you she's tricking him. And then she walked out of the room and she like, because like what she does is she's basically like, okay, I'll go cancel my date. And then she walks out of the room and she goes into the hallway and she pulls out like an imaginary cell phone and imaginary dials and then like imaginary talks and goes like, I can't go out on the date, which I'm only describing that in detail because it will be important later at the end of the episode.
And so now the whole family is going to Atlantic City. And I had this weird cognitive dissonance where in my head, I thought they were in LA for a second because like we're in LA. And I was like, wow, they're going really far for this weekend. But then I remembered they're in New York City. It's like 2 hours away. But we then cut to Atlantic City.
Oh, you thought they were going LA to Vegas.
No, I think I was thinking LA to
Atlantic City. Oh,
yeah, it made no sense. But the thing is I think at the time, Atlantic City was still pretty glitzy. Now Atlantic City is like literally the saddest place on earth. But
well, I mean, look, to be fair, I'm pretty sure I think they shot this at CBS Radford in LA. So from that standpoint, they did go far because they are actually in Trump Taj Mahal in Atlantic City, which, no longer exists because Trump can't keep any businesses open and successfully running, even a casino.
We cut to, all these exterior shots of Atlantic City, and then we're outside of the Taj Mahal Resort, and there's this doorman that's literally like, welcome to Mr. Trump's Taj Mahal Resort and Casino. And then we get some shots of like the interior as well, which I'm sure they were obligated to do.
Okay, so here's my conspiracy theory for the episode. They wanted Donald Trump to guest star on a previous episode, right? Because we had him pop up. I believe that part of his contractual negotiation for a guest appearance at this time was that then they had to film something in his casino, because there's a couple of shows that did this, that like he pops up on and then they like do an episode like at Trump Taj Mahal. So I have this weird conspiracy theory in my brain that this was actually an ask, not like, hey, let's do an episode of Trump Taj Mahal, but more like, I did you a favor, you do me a favor, you know?
Yeah. And we also know, though, that this was the first year that Trump had produced the Miss Universe contest, which was airing on CBS. So I'm sure there was a lot of cross-pollination.
There may have been some of that too, right? It could have just been a larger contractual CBS thing where he was like, I'll do the Miss Universe, but you gotta, Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. Checks out.
God.
But so they then that night, they go to see Chevy Chase's show and they're loving it. It's like dinner, stand up. And after the show, Chevy Chase comes over to Mr. Sheffield's table where he is with Cece and Fran. And
by the way, the Chevy Chase, like, they show like like the end of his stand-up routine or whatever. And it was like not funny.
Well,
it was like womp womp. I can't believe people paid to go see it. Like, because even at the time, I would have argued that Chevy Chase was not a stand-up. Like, he was like a funny movie actor, but like I would have been and I was a fan of Chevy Chase in this era, but even I would have been like, well, I don't want to see him do stand-up. I want to see him like fall over a Christmas tree.
Oh, it's so funny you said that, because I literally, when I was doing this, I was like, did Chevy Chase do stand-up? And I went on a whole Google rabbit hole, because I also do not know him as a stand-up.
Because he wasn't.
Yeah. And also I'll say this, like, because we're both comedy geeks.
Yeah.
Well, yes, he's like a horrible person. The comedic things he did well, like, give
great.
the devil his due. He was so good at falling down and making it look very funny. And he was very good at these kind of like quick little kind of absurdist comments.
Even on Community, a show that like the entire cast and crew has been outspoken, was a miserable experience working with him. He's hysterical when he shows up on screen.
Yeah.
He and the writing, it gets a lot of that credit, but like, he is funny. He just sucks as a human being, it seems.
So, Chevy Chase, he comes over and, Cece is literally like, oh, Mr. Chevy Chase, you were so incredible, blah, 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 blah. He goes, ooh, I feel your lips. And then he like touches his butt and he goes, right here. Basically being like, you're kissing my butt right now. And like, I'm aware of it. And then there's also this bit that it's kind of funny. He refuses to call Mr. Sheffield, or no, he repeatedly calls Mr. Sheffield by the wrong name, but it's a different wrong name every time.
Yeah.
Which I do think is funny. And he also insists that Mr. Sheffield call him Mr. Chase, even though he's letting everybody else call him Chevy.
Wait, did we also, before we move, because we're at Chevy having drinks with them, but we did get a quick scene.
Oh, yeah.
Establishing the B plot.
So I'm almost there. I was just going to kind of cut it. But so, blah, blah, blah. Oh, the running bit, Mr. Chevy. But the thing about all of this is he clearly likes Fran and sort of takes to her instantly. Like, she's basically the only one of the three that he's just like normal and polite to.
I mean, he clearly just is attracted to Fran, though. Like, they don't really like establish like, oh, he likes Fran's personality. He just like immediately is like, va 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 boom, hello, I will pay attention to, which, take it for what it's worth.
Yeah. And then we also during this scene had a quick cutaway to see what Niles was up to, because he was supposed to be at this dinner and a show, but he like had claimed he wasn't feeling well. Turns out that he is at the slot machine. Oh no, he's not at the slot machines. He's at a blackjack table. He has snuck away purely so that he can gamble alone.
No, the first one might have been craps.
Yeah.
The joke is that everything he's doing, every time you see him, he's playing a different game and losing badly. Yeah. So like, this is Niles in his like degenerate gambler era.
So much so that the next day, Fran finds Niles at the casino losing all of his money. He has stayed up all night and he's literally slumped over a slot machine. And I should say though, before she runs into Niles, she runs into Brighton, who is clearly on his way to some sort of strip show with a fake ID. And I love this moment because she's like, you got a fake ID? Like, how much did you pay for it? And he's like, $15. And she's like, oh, I paid $25 for mine. Like, let me see yours. And then he hands it over and she rips it off. She's like, go see Muppets on Ice. And I was like,
she says, she goes, right before she rips it up, she goes like, mine's better because they laminated it. And then she tears his in half.
Yes. And I was like, oh, I like when we see her taking care of business. Like,
me too.
She does take care of things in her own way.
It is fun when the show The Nanny shows her actually being a nanny.
And then she's also being a nanny to Niles because when she finds him slumped over this slot machine, she essentially takes his wallet away from him. She's like, you're going to lose all your money. You should have learned your lesson when we were on that cruise because he also was gambling on it. And Niles, he is so sulky. Like the way that they have him play this gambler Niles is so funny because he goes, that's not fair. The Wilsons let their butler gamble. And she's like, nope. She's like, go to your room. You've been up all night. Like, you go to bed. And he sulks away like an actual baby.
But as he sulks, and by the way, if it seems like we're all over the place this episode, this was how this episode was written. It was like disparate like scenes and storylines that then all culminate, which is fine. But so she takes this thing away and then she like sort of like absent-mindedly sits down at the slot machine, puts one of his coins into the slot machine and instantly wins.
Yes. And he sees it, gets upset, and sneaks back and steals his wallet, which leads into the next scene where, Fran has clearly realized that he took his wallet back. So she gets little Gracie to help sneak into his hotel room so that she can steal it back. And he is now passed out on the bed asleep. And there's this great physical comedy.
This is the best. This was my favorite part of the whole episode. Niles. Okay, so Niles is like sleeping and he is clearly dreaming about winning at slots. So like Fran goes to like reach over him and he grabs her arm and like pulls it down like a slot machine.
Yeah.
And then he does this really funny thing where in his dream he starts winning and he's like, yeah, I'm winning. And then Fran, to like keep like the fantasy going so she can like keep looking around the room for the wallet, starts throwing little like chips on him like he's winning, and every time she throws money on him he goes wee. Wee.
It was so funny. And yes, his physical comedy while lying on a bed pretending to be asleep was so genius. And then she like kind of gets on the bed because she's trying to get his wallet out of his pocket, and he rolls over and literally rolls her off the bed.
Yes.
It was just like very good, like kind of Lucille Ball-esque comedy from both of them.
It really was. It was great.
But so she successfully gets his wallet back, which comes into play later as well. And so then the next scene, we have Fran at the casino, and she sees Chevy at a blackjack table. And so she goes and sits down next to him. And it's funny because the dealer goes 21 and she goes 29, but thank you. And so as soon as she sits down next to him, like Chevy starts to win. And he's like, ooh, Fran, like, I think you're my lucky charm. He's like, I actually have a really big poker game at my hotel room later tonight. I'd love if you were there. Like, I think I could really use you. And it's interesting because at first I was wondering if this like was a ploy to get her into bed, but it is very clear that he truly just wants a lucky charm there. And this is what I think, and maybe this is what kind of colored my reading of the initial scene when he like totally is rude to Cece and Mr. Sheffield, but nice to Fran. I think I was like, oh no, I think he actually like isn't trying to get anything from her. He just innately felt like Cece was Cece and Mr. Sheffield were pathetic, and Fran was like,
I mean, I don't know. I disagree. Like, he's clearly like very disinterested in anything about her except that she's good looking. And like, I didn't write the line down, but there's even a line where she like says something slightly like suggestive and like a double entendre, and he interprets it like, yeah, we're gonna have sex, but he's like says something like, sure, after I'm done with this. But like clearly he just like met a hot lady, was like, come to my room, hang out while I play poker, and then maybe I'll like bang you afterwards.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'd like it if you came up to my room. And she's like, oh, yeah. She's like, I'm happy to be your lucky charm. And right as this happens, Mr. Sheffield sees them. And so he comes over, and he kind of comes over near the end of all of this discussion to the point where he's like, oh, Mr. Chase, do you want to have dinner tonight? And we can, talk about the show. And he goes, oh, I'd love to. He's like, but your lovely nanny's going to be in my bedroom. And she's like, yep. You might get lucky. And he's like, I hope so. And Mr. Sheffield assumes that they're talking about sex, even though they're talking about a poker game.
Yeah.
And Mr. Sheffield, of course, then rushes to Niles's room.
This was really funny too. He starts frantically knocking on Niles's door, and like Niles isn't, and he's like, Niles, old man, wake up. And like Niles is like just not waking up. And then he just like stops knocking, and he very, very quietly, Maxwell goes, Niles, Cece is moving in with us, and the door instantly opens, and this was another like great delivery. The door like yanks open, and he just goes, why?
Yes. And the thing that made this very funny is we know that he was asleep on the bed, but the speed at which the door swings open is inhumanly fast.
It's so funny. It's so funny.
Like the idea that Niles' eyes would have bolted open and he would have just like jumped towards the door. But basically Niles, he's no help to Mr. Sheffield in this situation, because Mr. Sheffield's like, I think Miss Fine is going to be in Chevy Chase's room tonight, and I think, he's going to bed her. But Niles is just completely out of sorts because he can't find his wallet. So he's like, no help to Mr. Sheffield, who just like leaves completely agitated. And then we cut to Maggie and Fran in Fran's room, and Fran is now opening a gift from Chevy Chase, and she's like, oh my gosh. She's like, this is the dress I wanted to wear tonight, but how did he know? And Maggie goes, because you took him into a boutique and said, this is the dress I want to wear tonight. And then Fran goes, but how did he pick up on the subtlety? And I was like, okay, this is when you're like, Fran is definitely Sylvia's daughter.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because she actually seems to be impressed that he knew. But then Niles comes bursting in, and he tells Fran to give him back his wallet. And she's like, nope. She's like, I am not going to enable your addiction. But then he says he has information about Mr. Sheffield that she'll absolutely want to know. And he kind of like motions to his ring finger, sort of being like, this has to do with you and him and like your relationship.
Mm-hmm. I took that as even more like, not only just like of your relationship, but I took it as like, I know when he's going to propose to you, and she was like, okay, tell me what you know, and I'll tell you where your wallet is.
And I will say that one thing I liked about this scene is while it seemed like all these random things were happening, in this episode, they now kind of all come together to make sense in a way that like, I think is always really nice when writing on a TV show could do this, because like his gambling addiction and her stealing his wallet now is coming into play with what's happening tonight. And so she's like, well, okay, fine, tell me. And he basically says that Mr. Sheffield is insanely jealous about the whole Chevy Chase thing and thinks that they are going to sleep together. And then Fran, she's like, ooh, she was like, like she clearly like is taking that information in and is now going to use it to her advantage. But then she does not give she does not give Niles his wallet back, and says that she has entrusted it to someone who is going to love having the power over him. And he instantly goes, Miss Babcock. And then he rushes out looking for her. But then it turns out she actually gave it to Gracie, who comes out from like a side room and is like, he's not going to be giving me attitude the next time I ask for more candy in my lunch this time. And then Maggie goes, she's like, I can't believe Dad is so jealous. And Fran goes, well, don't make it worse by telling him that Chevy got me this sexy gown and that I'm going to be in his room tonight at 11:15. And Maggie's like, I mean, I wasn't gonna. And she's like, yes, you were. Basically being like, I want him to know, and I want this to all work to my advantage.
And then we get this was a great episode, by the way. Like there's another really funny scene where Fran is now in with Chevy Chase, right? And it's like Chevy Chase and like 5 people like just playing poker and like kind of annoying Fran, and like also Chevy seems almost a little annoyed with her.
Yes, because the thing is, so now that they are at Chevy's hotel room and this poker game is going on. Fran knows that Mr. Sheffield is going to like basically be outside the door trying to listen in.
Right.
And even to the point where she is on the phone saying goodnight to Gracie. And she's like, okay, sweetie, did your father just leave? Did he seem upset? Oh, how awful. And then she goes, how's the babysitter? No, it's not really Diana Ross. He just plays her in a show here. So instead of doing her actual job of nannying these children, she's literally like paid a Diana Ross impersonator. And I said that was one of the best lines of the app on multiple levels. But but she knows that Mr. Sheffield is probably going to be like truly listening outside the door to figure out what's going on. And so she starts to tailor all of her responses to Chevy Chase through the lens of it will sound like we are about to get it on. So like
everything she says is a double entendre that could be what she's talking about in the room and have to do completely in context with like poker and like a poker game, but outside the room to someone who's already in their head thinks that they're going to have sex sounds like they're doing it. Like, what does she say? She says like, she goes like, let me take it off, like, or what does she say?
She puts like something on the table, like a dessert that's like blocking their game, and he goes, Fran, take it off. And he goes, we can't start to play if you don't take it off. and then he's like, Fran, could you get me a drink? And she's like, yes, Chevy, yes. and to the point where, because all of her reactions are so loud and absurd, he is starting to get annoyed. And he even says, he's like, I didn't bring you up here to talk.
Yes.
But then Mr. Sheffield is now 100% convinced that this is happening. And Niles, by the way, is also with him at this point because Niles is looking for Miss Babcock. And we further established that Niles is just disgustingly addicted to gambling. Like he needs a fix. It's all he can think about. And Mr. Sheffield's like, I think you might have a bit of a gambling problem, old boy. but so then Mr. Sheffield storms into this hotel room and he throws Fran over his shoulder before suddenly realizing that this is not what he thought it was. Like there's a room full of fully dressed people playing poker, and he like kind of tries to cover it up, but like he's like, how could you play that hand with 3 queens? Okay, good night, everybody. And then Fran, while she's still over his shoulder, goes, night, Chevy. And he's like, night, Fran, like hardly looking up from his game. Like, and I actually, now that I was thinking about it, I think what Chevy Chase was very, very good at in his heyday was being like very unflappable. Like something very, very crazy could be happening around him, and he is literally just like completely like it doesn't faze him at all. To the point of like comedic exaggeration.
Yeah. And then we get so Maxwell takes her out of the room, they get into the hallway, and then we get one of my favorite lines of the entire series, which is where they called out, I thought it was so sweet, the title of our podcast, because they come outside the room and she says, oh, Mr. Sheffield, I can't believe you barged in there and dragged me out. And I went, oh, she said it.
It was a wink at us.
It was a wink at us. It was for us. It was really sweet of them to do that.
Yep. And she's like, Mr. Sheffield, like, can you just admit that you were clearly jealous and that's why you did that? And she even said, like, you were clearly jealous. Why can't you admit it? And he kind of like fumbles and stumbles. And then he just goes, well, first, why don't you tell me why a man in a sequins dress is singing Gracie to sleep with Ain't No Mountain High Enough? And then she knows now she's been foiled because she's been caught. And so she just kind of like snaps her finger in frustration and marches away.
This scene was so weird, this next scene.
Okay, I know. I mean, well, we I guess it makes sense in the context that we established that Cece is very horned up this weekend and was hoping to maybe get lucky with all of these like drunk men in the casino. Yeah. And so she is sitting alone in her room. And Niles bursts in and he goes, give it to me now. I won't leave until I've got what I came for.
She goes like, oh, Niles.
Yes. And she's like, I've never seen this side of you before. Yes. And she clearly thinks that he is there to have sex with her.
Which, okay, I was into the scene. I got the premise. I'm going with it. And then she's like, she's like, oh, like, do you want like, she's like, you're so kinky. I can be kinky. And she says like, like, do you want like handcuffs? She goes, or do you want like a hand puppet? And it's like, what?
Well, I think it's that Cece has no idea what she's doing. She's like, I've got this. She's like, I've got puppets. And then he goes, I'm looking for my wallet. And then with the puppet, with her hand as a puppet, she goes, you don't have to pay me.
It's so weird.
Well, no, it's just that I think Cece has no idea what she's doing with men. She has less than zero idea. And like, you like remember when he like pranked her and made her cluck like a chicken and she did it? Like, yes. I think Cece is the most inexperienced, the most like fumbling person in this arena, like when you actually get to know her. And so, yeah, that was like a funny thing. And then the very last scene in the episode is everyone gets back home to the mansion after their weekend away. And we find out that Niles has been betting with the kids on every single thing that each member of the family was going to say when they walked in. And he's like literally getting money from them by being so great at this. And the very last thing is Mr. Sheffield. He's like, the very last thing is, Mr. Sheffield looks at Fran. He's like, the crazy thing is I'm still not sure if Chevy Chase is going to do my show. And Fran's like, well, I'd be happy to talk to him. We had a pretty good rapport. And he's like, that's not a bad idea. I'm going to see if I can get the two of you together. And then he leaves and goes into the hallway and he pulls out a fake phone and he's like, beep, 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 beep. And then he's like, hi, Chevy, do you want to get together with Miss Fine? Nope. And then he hangs up. And I thought that was really cute because
I loved that.
Yeah. Like he doesn't even care if this would be good for his show. He does not want Chevy Chase anywhere near Fran because of his feelings about her.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, I mean, we've been here before with consistently with Maxwell, where it's like he doesn't want to commit, but he definitely doesn't want anyone else to have her, which is so selfish.
I think I would have really liked, I'm realizing like after this episode and some sort of conversation or acknowledgement as to why Mr. Sheffield is doing this, because I think we sort of established that he was just so upset by the Elton John thing, but we never heard him say that. We never have heard him say anything about it. We just know he's not asking her out again. And that she's again kind of like, not in his good graces right now. But I would have loved it if I don't know, we got some insight into maybe even just hearing him say that. Because it seems a little like just just like thrown together to create tension at this point again. Yeah. Yet again.
Yep. But overall, this was a great episode. It was very, very, very funny. Everyone was giving fantastic performances. Niles, I think, is the MVP of the episode. And yeah, that was an episode, which means what, Toria?
It's time for segments. So, segments.
Yeah, no, I think we should move on to segments.
We can move on to our segments.
And now, segments.
Segments with Sean and Toria.
My favorite part of that is your laugh at the end.
It's because I can't ever finish something without laughing. Okay, favorite lines and moments.
Well, right out of the gate, I really liked in the first scene, Fran says, or no, who says it? Someone says it's cheap and easy. And then Fran adds, and he still won't ask me out on a second date.
Yes. Cece's like, Cece's like, Maxwell, a one-man show. It's cheap and easy.
Mm-hmm. But Fran walks in only on the it's cheap and easy part. And it just is like, thinks they're talking about her.
Yes. Well, I really liked when Niles walks in and he says something like mean to Cece. And she goes, Niles, I didn't recognize you. Wait, stand in Maxwell's shadow. I loved when Fran ripped up Brighton's ID and then tells him to watch Muppets on Ice.
And you mentioned it, but Chevy going, I think I felt someone's lips right here and like touching his butt was very funny.
Yes. I did like earlier in the episode when Fran goes, Chevy Chase, I love him. I saw Vacation, European Vacation, Vegas Vacation. He's very versatile. And I was actually like, oh, I guess I do, or I guess appreciate that Chevy Chase was fine with that line being in there because there are, a Donald Trump would not.
Well, me too. I like you go like, oh, I guess he did have a sense of humor about himself at some point.
All right, so I really loved the no, honey, it's not really Diana Ross. He just plays her in a show here.
Yes, great delivery, really funny line. I like that too. I think and the card dealer, the blackjack dealer going 21 and Fran just going, I'm 29, but thank you. It was
yes, that was so good. There was no Yiddish in this episode.
No, there was not because Jewish people typically don't gamble. So it was a very non-Jewish episode.
Then for Nini,
we don't like to lose money. We like to make it.
Yeah, when I was in Vegas, I refused to gamble and I went to the mall instead because I said I'd rather hold the thing in my hand than I spend my money.
Yes.
I had meant to have my phone out here with me because for Nanny Trivia, I was going to read from one of our listeners who sometimes sends us some really excellent trivia. It's Le Petite Sparks. She's such a helpful, wonderful listener. So I'll have to kind of do this from memory. But basically, she said that Fran Drescher was in The Three Amigos, which was a famous Chevy Chase. The thing is, her scenes were cut. Her scenes were cut, which really was not what the director it's John Landis, right? I don't know my notes.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes, John Landis. He did not intend her scenes to be cut, but the studio did some edits behind his back to trim it. So she basically played kind of an homage to a character in Singing in the Rain. The woman who has the horrible voice but looks pretty.
That's
so
funny.
she was kind of a character like that, and she was one of the Three Amigos' big competitors in the beginning of the movie when they're still in Hollywood. And the Three Amigos stars Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, and Martin Short. Very famous comedy of the era. But I had no idea Fran was in that movie. But so that's probably how she knew Chevy. And though La Petite Sparks had mentioned that she thinks she read that the footage got destroyed in a studio fire, I did read on a Vulture article that some but not all of Drescher's scenes were included in the recent extended cut released on Blu-ray. So maybe some of it was actually saved or salvaged.
Fun.
I think that it's just so cool. I mean, again, the movies she has been a part of are pretty epic.
That is really cool.
Fran of the CC?
Well, before we do that, I am very, very, very excited. First of all, I want to just say we have the best listeners in the whole world. Everyone is so freaking nice. It's crazy. So towards the end of last season, and I think the first couple episodes of season 5, I have been making a plea for people to email us. And we've gotten so many emails in the last couple of days, more emails than we've ever gotten ever in the history of the entire show, 100 plus episodes now, which is lovely and sweet. So if you guys keep sending emails in, then I will read them on the episodes because it's super fun. So this week I'm going to, did I read this one already? This is going to be the problem when I can't remember if I read it or not. Or if I just showed it to you.
We will read you the same email every
over
week.
Again.
And that is a problem.
All right. Well, I'm going to read 2 this week because I may have already done this one, but
you did Holly last week.
Oh, I did. Okay, good. Okay. So then this one that I'll do this week is from Sally. I don't know if Sally wants me to give out her last name, but Sally wrote to say, you can no longer say you've never received an email. Hello, Tori and Sean. Congratulations on a great season. I think your podcast is amazing. I am really excited for season 5. I recommend this podcast to my family. We all used to watch Nanny in the 90s. My sister especially loves the podcast. And then she says, please dress up in your favorite nanny look for the recording of the last episode ever and put pictures on Instagram, which great idea. And Tori and I have been talking about being Sylvia and Yetta for a while now. So maybe that's what we should do for the final episode. We should do it in full Sylvia and Yetta get-ups.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love it too. Thank you, Sally, for sending the email.
Hi, Sally.
And I'll read another one next week. If you want to send in an email and have it read on the show, you can send one to Mr. Sheffield podcast@gmail.com. And now, yeah.
Well, I was just laughing because one of my favorite podcasts that I listen to, My Favorite Murder, they do hometown murders, and I'm like, what if someone actually accidentally sent their hometown murder to us, and they sent their nanny love to them?
I'm into it.
But so then the Fran or the Cece or whoever, who did you relate to?
I mean, there is gambling addiction in my family. Like it is so and it's not me, but I related to the Niles storyline, I think, the most because it is a debilitating and horrendous disease that often is incorrectly portrayed in the media as the butt of a joke. Also, I will say I related to Brighton because I too was a very horny teenager.
Ugh. Did you have a fake ID?
I never had a fake ID. No, because I wasn't really trying to like drink. That was at least when around amongst my friends, the reason for the fake ID was just so you could drink,
That's true.
We didn't I don't really know anyone that was like, I got to get a fake ID so I can go to like a porn store. Although my buddy and I would go every week. This was like once we had turned like 18. We would go every week, and I would pick him up on Wednesdays when new comic books came out, and we would go to the record store, and then we'd go to the comic book store and pick up like all the week's new comic books. And right next door to the comic book store that we went to was this. It was on its front a card shop, and the first, I would say, 4.5 feet of the store were just like these like yellowed, sun damaged generic greeting cards, and then there was like a curtain, and then beyond the curtain was just he was actually just selling pornography. And my friend and I, we had just turned 18, and we went and we were so excited to go to the comic store, but now we were 18, so we could go into the porn shop. And then we got too nervous to go in, and we never went.
But anyway, okay, so who did I relate to? I really related to, I think, Mr. Sheffield, in that I'm a very jealous person and also a very passive aggressive person when I feel that way. I'm really trying to get better at it. I really am. And I have gotten better, but I've definitely destroyed some connections because of it.
That's interesting. I've never really been a jealous person. I think it's not, and that's not a brag, because I think the reason I'm not jealous is because I have such low self-esteem.
But wouldn't that make you, I think that should make you more jealous, because you're convinced that this person's clearly going to like this other person more than me. And
but my brain just goes yeah, and that's probably right.
I love you so much. You should be with them.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? This wouldn't have happened if I was better, so I'm just going to move on.
All right. Well, that's an episode. Yes. Thank you guys for listening. Again, we're having so much fun, and we love that you guys are doing this with us.
Don't forget to rate and review on wherever you listen to it. Follow us, subscribe on Spotify, because they really like when you do that. And you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Mr. Chef Pod. And that's it. Everybody have a week, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
The Flushing Girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
Miss Fine.